Alright, what is up everybody? Varric here. We have another installment of the Flamebellow Barbarian. I just wanted to take some time today and talk about my thoughts on the Frenzy ability. And, I've said in the past how, I don't necessarily like using it. I've been using it because I thought it was best. I think we learned a valuable lesson recently, just yesterday. From one of our friends, Breck, there in the Discord. It looks bad. It looks awkward. It just doesn't look good to have to stop and frenzy. And he's right. I mean, it's very true. The reason we use it is because the frenzy buff is very nice, right? I mean, you can see it gives you damage, it gives you attack rating, it gives you attack speed, which you don't necessarily need other than just attack using another frenzy. But the biggest thing, it gives you walk and run speed, which that's awesome. It feels really good to zoom around the map. But one of the biggest things is it gives you melee splash radius. So the melee splash radius has certain breakpoints, just like most other things have in this game. And it just so happens that you have to stack it up probably around 3 or 4 times. Apologies, dogs are going to start fighting, of course. You have to stack it up a couple times before you reach that breakpoint of increased melee range. So your swords are actually hitting in a wider radius. Sorry, it's in the morning, so I'm gonna drink coffee. You're hitting in a wider radius when you have your frenzy stacked up. So the frenzy buff itself is super nice, but again, in practice, it's not that great to use. It feels bad. You're having to stop your momentum. To have to restack the buff, and you could be in your whirlwinding, you could be in a really awkward position, you could be in a really awkward place, and you don't necessarily want to have to stop and stack that buff back up. And if you lose your stacks, if you don't stop and you keep whirlwinding because it's dangerous, then you lose all your stacks and you have to stack them back up again. It's not a huge deal, but it's just what I consider probably the epitome of clunky gameplay. Right, it just feels clunky. It doesn't feel like it's flowing. It does suck to have to stop your momentum. So let's just get into a map. I'll show you the difference. Here's the map. Pretty nice map. I didn't slam it. I didn't want to risk it rolling like 50% increased life, but it's a nice map. We'll get into Zone Cool. I think we've done. I've shown Cals, I've shown T1s with my kind of end game. Not necessarily end game, but pretty strong build. So yeah, we'll get into the map, and I'll also show you, we did get a new item. This is donated by somebody who was watching the YouTube and commented Sweentown. So thank you to him. This is a really nice item, really huge upgrade. So I was finally able to get that Rising Sun with ED. So let's get into this map, give it a try, and I'll show you guys. So we'll start by stacking up the frenzy, right? And this is how you know it. You stack up the frenzy, and then you spin around. Okay, so right about now we're at that increased melee splash range. So it's not something you're gonna really notice, but hey, we got it. So good to have it. So there you go. I have to stop again. I have to frenzy. I'm spinning around again. We just lost our mercenary. That's great. The only issue with Zoltan Cool is it does have physical immune, so you have to be careful of your mercenary. So we're stopping, we're frenzying. I'm gonna have to go back to town real quick because I gotta resurrect. Alright. And that's another thing that can happen. You can lose your mercenary, and all of a sudden you gotta restack your frenzy. So all things that kind of make you have to break what you were already doing. Okay, so I don't have to keep showing it. You can already tell it's awkward to have to stop and do. And I've said it in previous videos, sometimes it doesn't always hit. Sometimes you're stopping real quick to do that frenzy, and that frenzy doesn't hit. And then all of a sudden you gotta stop and do it again. Just re-shouting, I got a skill buff, I like to make sure I do that. Alright, so the nice, one thing you do have to also pay attention to is what your timer's at. So, it does become a little not as, sometimes you're just kind of doing it when you're thinking about it, but it ends up being too much, right? So sometimes I'll be casting Frenzy again when I'm at like 10 seconds, and I have plenty more time to whirlwind around before having to Frenzy again. So it's just another thing to keep an eye on. Okay, so anyway, that's I think I've shown it enough, and you've seen it before, having to see my gameplay. So why don't we go ahead and stop frenzying, and we'll just show you what it looks like. And you can still use frenzy, which is nice. You know, maybe I want to get from here to there quicker. I can frenzy. Great. Okay, but we're gonna let this drop off now, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. So here it goes. It's dropping off. Okay, so we don't have frenzy anymore. And really nothing, you're not zooming around as much, but you're doing just fine. In fact, I've even found that sometimes, we lost our mercenary again. Alright, well, I do this dungeon fun, my mercenary not so much. But one thing I've actually also found with Frenzy is sometimes I zoom a little too fast, and I don't necessarily hit the mobs. Right, so you know the frames on Whirlwind can only hit so many times, right? The nice thing about dual wielding is it is hitting twice, right? It's doubling the amount of times your Whirlwind hits, but just because you pass through them doesn't always necessarily mean you're hitting them. And if you get yourself, nice G-face. We love G-face. We don't love that G-face. If you get yourself a nice stamina buff, all of a sudden you're zooming around even twice as fast with Frenzy and the stamina buff. You might not even hit most mobs you come across. So here you go. We are hitting mobs. We're slowing down a little bit, which gives us more time to actually target these mobs and hit them. So that's a nice benefit. I wouldn't say it's. I still think Frenzy is important. I still think Frenzy is a good buff to keep up, but in its current form, the way you have to do it, having tested this now, having done this both ways, I don't see a point. That's kind of my thoughts on it right now. Maybe I have a change of heart. Maybe I miss the speed in the future, but right now I'm just gonna whirlwind around and not worry about stacking up Frenzy, because it really just isn't worth. I think you do just fine without it. It takes away that big clunky mechanic that I've had to worry about this whole time. So I think that's it. That's kind of my opinion on it. Now, how do we improve Frenzy? Like, this part of what I wanted to do in this video is talk a little bit about some of my ideas on how we can make Frenzy better. Because I think you can, and I think it needs to be made better because it is such a good ability. But the Diablo 2 iteration of it just feels so bad. It doesn't feel good. And this is a game that really just lots of things feel. Come on, dogs. Sorry. This is a game where we have the ability to make things feel better. We have the ability to improve upon skills that were made so great in Diablo, but may not have the greatest execution. So here's my thoughts. Frenzy, thematically, let's talk about thematically, because that's kind of how I think about these video games sometimes, is it's a role-playing game in a certain sense, where you're taking on this character and you're trying to get into him, right? That's why I play Barbarian all the time. It's just a fun build, and it's fun to get into the character and pretend you're this battle-raged barbarian just leaping into the crowd, or going deep into the enemy and spinning around and causing mayhem and destruction. So what does the Frenzy buff do? The Frenzy buff makes it so that you have this battle frenzy. You continue to spin into the group, you continue to run into the group and keep your forward momentum. And oh gosh, that's not good. I don't have any buffs. keep you for momentum, even at the risk of your life. You know, with this frenzy buff, I gotta get my mercenary. But yeah, like, that's the way I see it, right? That's the way I see, you know, you stack up your frenzy, you get into this rage, and all of a sudden you're this unstoppable force. And unstoppable means you don't stop, right? So to have to stop whatever you're doing and stack up your frenzy just doesn't feel right, right? The way I would like it to be seen is, let's make your finishers I say, like the build's finishers, right? Whirlwind, double throw, double swing. Make your finishers have the ability to continue to lengthen the frenzy. Oh gosh, I'm gonna die here. Sorry, I got a pack that just doesn't want to be very nice to me. Make it so your finishers have the ability to extend the frenzy buff. Right now, I don't think necessarily needs to stack the frenzy buff, but to be able to extend the frenzy buff is what I think the finisher should do. So what does this do? This motivates you to continue attacking. This motivates you to keep battling, to keep going, which is what the Barbarian wants to do. And in all practicality, that's what you want to do when you're doing maps. You want to just keep moving. You want to keep moving forward. You want to, you know, move from one pack to the next and not have to stop to reapply a buff. Other than, you know, your other than your battle shouts, right? So I understand that. I understand that's you know, buffs can only have so much timer, and you're not expected to have some some buff that lasts the whole map. I get it, and like, yeah, I'm sure you could do the map quickly enough where you only maybe have to rebuff once or twice. So maybe that's another way that we can improve frenzy. Maybe make it last longer. Maybe make it a 30-second buff or something like that. But that's not necessarily my take on it. I still think that that's the cool thing to me. That's what I think would be a really cool way to make frenzy better. Because it's not just Whirlwind, right, that uses frenzy, and you know, not even most Whirlwinders you worry about frenzy. That's not even something they think about, especially if you're a two-handed Barbarian Whirlwinder using a two-handed weapon. Frenzy's not even on your mind, right? You can't even do it with one weapon. But your other abilities, your other builds like double throw. Double throw is another Barbarian that really benefits from frenzy, right? They get that attack speed, they get that movement speed. So when they stack up their frenzy, they want to stack it up and then attack from the rear, right? They want to keep a distance and not have to worry about going into the fray again. But when you're having to restack a 15-second buff timer over and over and over and keep putting yourself in harm's way, especially when you're getting into the end game where you want to maximize your speed, maximize your damage, but at the same time you're feeling like you need to get more tanky in order to have to go in and stack up that frenzy, because a lot of barbarians, double throw barbarians, are gonna build themselves as glass cannons, right? They're gonna go all into dexterity. They're gonna not try to put anything into vitality because of the fact that they're a range character. They just want to sit back and they want to throw their weapons. And just like any multi-shot zone, they don't want to build for survivability. They want to build for pure damage and attack from range. And that's the way to build those classes. Now, sure, you can build a little bit of tankiness, especially if you're gonna be wanting to stack up your frenzy. Then you're gonna need a little tankiness, because you're gonna have to go up and smack those mobs once or twice to keep your frenzy buff. So it just it takes away from how you might want to build your class. And if you don't do that, if you don't build tanky, well, now you're just putting yourself in harm's way. And if you're a hardcore character, you're obviously not going to want to do that. So I get that that's part of the game, is having to make these difficult decisions. But again, I think frenzy is just such a cool buff that it feels bad to have to make the decision to not use it in order to build your character a certain way. And then lastly is double throw, right? So double throw, excuse me, lastly is double swing, right? And that's, I think, that's like your Frenzy Barbarian, right? The Frenzy Barbarian doesn't use Frenzy as their primary damage. Once they get good enough gear, they're no longer frenzying as a form of damage. They're double swinging. And, yes, they still have to, again, they have to stack up their frenzy every 15 seconds. So it's just another reason why it can be just awkward and clunky and not fun to have to sit there and use another ability every 15 seconds. And it's an awkward ability, right? I'm whirlwinding around, all of a sudden I have to stop what I'm doing in the middle of a bunch of mobs, and it just kills your momentum. So those are, like I said, those I think are the 3 builds that typically use Frenzy the most. I'm sure someone could talk about like Berserk. I think Berserk Barbarians can also have 2 weapons now. They double swing with their Berserk ability. So sure, maybe that's another one. I don't know the build very much. I'm not going to talk about it. Here, I'm still stacking it up now that I'm talking about it. So I don't know if I've been doing that the whole time. I'm too busy talking. So if I've been stacking up Frenzy, then I'd say it's still ingrained into my mind and I'm just talking too much about it. But we're going to let that buff fall off again. Yeah, so anyway, those are my opinions on it. That's my thoughts on it. We're nearing the end of the map here. Why don't we just go ahead and finish out the map and we'll call it a day. But I did put that feedback into the Discord. Hopefully it gets looked at. I think people have been talking about wanting to improve Frenzy for quite a while now, and we haven't had much change in the ability. So, we just got to keep talking about it, and hopefully change will come. I think Frenzy has a really cool place in the game. And right now I think it's underutilized and I think it could be better. So hey, maybe this video gets out to some of these devs and they take a look, or maybe they take a look at my feedback and well, that's nice to have. And they consider some of my thoughts. So anyway, we'll finish out this map after this video. I gotta go pick up stuff too. So anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Those are really my thoughts. Again, sorry if the gameplay continued to use Frenzy. I really wasn't even thinking about it. It's just ingrained into me now to stop and hit the ability. But yes, I am going to stop now that I'm thinking about it. I don't even know if I was doing it all dungeon, but that is my new plan, to stop using Frenzy, just whirlwind like normal. Increase the amount of uptime you have on the mobs, and it just takes away that clunky gameplay. So again, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any opinions, thoughts, maybe ways to improve Frenzy, feel free to throw it in the comments. We can talk about it a little more. As always, I'm really just trying to breed discussion with a lot of these things, because this is a great game. I love this game, and I think it can always, there's always different ways to improve it, no matter how good it is. So yeah, again, feel free to comment, and as always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want me to do more, if you enjoy my content. And I do stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Varyk, Varyk. Alright guys, have a great day. See you later.